I would actually read from page 147. The bitter woman has made the habit of thinking she is ill-used. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter how ill the usage. The flat tire or the unfaithful husband alike are simply new evidence to her that she is fundamentally unfortunate and has a right to be angry. There it is. There's that last phrase, has a right to be angry. Mm-hmm. Man, I run into this. Mm-hmm. I have a right to be angry. And then it even goes further. You must affirm my anger. Mm-hmm. You must affirm my out of control. The fruit of the Spirit is self-control. Mine is all out of control. You must affirm my anger. So do you think, are there many angry women or men who believe they have a right to be angry?
Yeah, I mean, I see this as a across the board men and women problem. I mean, there's a certain kind of bitterness that I think is a very feminine type of bitterness, but this is the flip side of that gratitude that really is that idea planted in the early chapter with the marriage and, calling out things to be grateful for in your husband. And that's spreading perniciously to all of life, this pernicious gratitude that might take hold of the patient, where she begins to see herself as essentially fortunate as a child of God who has been blessed, and but the opposite, I think the opposite end of that, this just attitude in life where everything that you see is fresh evidence that God himself has wronged you by not giving you what you want. And that I see that in men and women all the time. Yep. So it's anger. It's the heart of anger.
Welcome to Grounded, a podcast for restoring the church to a biblical foundation. I'm Steve Hartland, the host, and today I have a guest, a very special guest. Her name is Tilly Dillehay. Tilly, say hi. Thank you for joining me. Say hi to people.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
It's a real pleasure. By the way, I'm near Baltimore, Maryland. Where are you?
I'm in Tennessee, out in the boonies.
Tennessee. In the boonies of Tennessee. Very good. All right. Well, we're going to talk about your most recent book, which is titled My Dear Hemlock. My Dear Hemlock. But first, I want to give our listeners a little bit of bio about you. So here's what I was able to find out. Correct me if any of this is no longer true. You have a degree in journalism. You got it at a university in Nashville. You're married. Your husband's a pastor. You have 4 children.
Yep.
And you know what? That just struck me when I said that. 4 children, and you just finished your 3rd book. We're talking about your 3rd book. Tell all the women out there in the world, how on earth did you write books when you had 3 and now 4 children?
The first book I wrote before I had children mostly. That book about envy was really, I think I polished that book up with an infant, but that was early mornings as I would do that. The second book I wrote when I was pregnant, and I do not recommend that. This book I also wrote while I was pregnant, but I didn't know I was going to be pregnant when I signed. And when they settled that deadline, it was due a month before my baby was due. And I asked them for an extension, and they said, nope, make your deadline. So no pity from Canon.
That's Canon Press, huh?
Right. Well, it wouldn't have been easier to finish it with a baby. I don't know what I was thinking. So I'm glad I got it out the door before baby number 4 came up. But
glad it works.
Yeah.
Huh. If I had known that before I read your book, I would have been looking for can I tell here that she's not feeling well today?
Yeah, that's right. Morning sickness.
Yes. No, it never struck me. Hey, your other 2 books, the first one's called Seeing Green. It's about envy, I believe. This is for women, right? It's a book for women in particular?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure a man could benefit. I write for women. I am a woman. So, yeah.
Makes sense. I haven't read that one. Got me interested. Your other book, Broken Bread, is about food issues, eating issues. I have to tell you the truth. I'm not interested in that one, but I'm sure there are lots of people who are. So want to say anything about that book quick before we get going with the newest book?
Well, yeah, that book is actually out of print, and I just recently found that out. And I believe Canon may be picking it up and printing it for me because I just want it, I want it to still be available. Some people have asked about it. Sure. But yeah, that's not like a diet book. It's about these 4 kind of poles of extremes related to food: asceticism, gluttony, snobbery, and apathy. And that's kind of the structure for that book. So,
Very good. Food issues.
Mm-hmm.
But today we're talking about your newest book. Here, I want to show them the paper cover. I always rip the paper covers off the book when I'm reading them.
I do too. I do too. But
here's
I love,
the cover.
Yeah,
Isn't
they
that
did
a
a great
pretty
job.
cover? There it is. Tilly Dillehay, My Dear Hemlock. And then I want to show you the actual book itself. This is really lovely. I'm glad they did this.
I know.
This is a book by a woman for women, and it looks like it. And I don't mind it. As a guy reading it, I didn't mind that at all. This is a wonderful little book. So let's back up a little bit and talk about, you modeled this on C.S. Lewis's Screwtape Letters. This is my copy from the 70s. My wife and I bought it and read it then. I think it came out in the 60s maybe, but I was too young to know it then. And we read this way back when and absolutely loved it. And your book is kind of modeled on this one. Now, some of our listeners might not even be familiar with this one. So tell us, what's the deal with this one? And then in what way did you kind of model yours after that? Yeah.
Yeah. So Screwtape Letters is a book of fictional letters from a mentor demon to a younger, less experienced demon, his nephew, supposedly. And the voice that Lewis has created for this character is sort of this arrogant Oxford Don. And it is the content of the letters is how to tempt your patient. That's the name of the guy that this demon has been assigned to tempt. And these tempters are plotting how to get this guy further away from the enemy, that is God, and I guess under the control of our forces. So it's it's enemy information from the underground. And it follows that patient is I think he's about to become a Christian at the beginning of the book. He becomes a Christian, and then it's his early walk through Christianity.
Yes.
So
how does your book kind of follow that, but yet differ from it? There's an interesting twist. Your book differs from it. Tell us about it.
That's right. Well, it's a female patient, and the person writing the letters is now Madame Hoaxrot writing to Hemlock, who has been assigned this patient who just became a believer, is newly married. And as you follow this patient over the course of the 30 letters in the book, she becomes a mother. She's navigating marriage and the church, and eventually you follow her all the way into middle age. So, the difference is just she's a woman living today, and that's the difference in the patient. So
again, in C.S. Lewis's Screwtape Letters, the senior demon mentoring the younger demon and tempting the patient, they're all masculine.
That's right.
In this book, they're all feminine. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they're all feminine. So you got feminine demons, interesting concept, and they're tempting a woman. And so I just want to get cheeky here and ask you, so are you daring to say in this day that there are unique feminine bosom sins? And so by contrast, there would also be unique masculine. Men have these sins, women have these. Are you saying there are distinctively feminine temptations or ways of tempting? Are you saying that?
I think I am. The thing about it is I've been a woman before. So I'm aware of what at least one woman's heart looks like in what is tempting to me. So that's where this came from.
Yeah, very good. So there is an underlying premise here. Men and women are different. Mm-hmm. Men and women aren't interchangeable. There are ways in which men and women are uniquely tempted. Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so let me ask you another question, staying on that theme a little bit. So you got the senior demon and the junior demon, the mentor and the mentoree. Do the female demons have a distinctly female voice?
Yeah. Well, you never hear from Hemlock actually, so you don't except when the person writing the letters maybe responds to something that Hemlock has maybe written. But Madame Hoaxrot is the one writing the letters, and she has this kind of, my sort of take, my own version of the voice. Instead of an Oxford Don, she's like a French, catty, kind of slightly catty, condescending. She's like she's the worst version of womanhood, I guess.
Is she Madame Beauvoir?
Madame Bovary. She's
Bovary.
Madame Hoaxrot is her name. I am toying with the idea of having her in the audiobook pronouncing her Madame Hoaxrot, so that she's to go full on French with her pronunciation, just because I think it's obnoxious when people do that. But basically, yeah, she's Madame Hoaxrot, and she's the world's worst advisor. So, yeah, but the things that they're concerned with are things that I think are at the forefront of the ways that a woman is being tempted now. And it's dissatisfaction and discontentment in her marriage, and just general worldliness. It's distraction from the tasks that she could be engaged in for the kingdom, making her home into a wartime outpost, making her home into a really dangerous place for the enemy. And so they want to lead her off track, thinking about other things. It's, being submissive to her husband. It's how is she raising her children? At one point, she's led off on kind of an emotional kind of like an emotional affair with a guy at work. Later on, there's old friends. She's deciding whether to throw in her life with new people at church that make her feel uncomfortable because they are superior to her, or whether to keep on spending time with the worldly people from college that don't challenge her at all, that's actually a direct steal from Lewis. He has kind of a similar letter that I just updated basically, but cool. Yeah, so that's
Good.
it.
So I'm going to start working through some parts of the book. Like I'm going to dip in here and dip in there and ask you, what about this? What about that? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to jump to chapter 3, where the patient gets married. So she is single for the first few chapters. Chapter 3, she gets married. And this is a real loss for the demon temptresses. Mm-hmm. Like the junior demon bungled it. The patient got married. Mm-hmm. Why is this such a loss for them?
I think she marries another one of them. She marries another Christian, and they are building a family now together. And this is a dangerous new entity that they don't know exactly what it's going to be, and they're going to get in there and get to work on that entity, but it's still a dangerous entity.
Because she married another believer,
mm-hmm.
So there's trouble. It's going to be harder to tempt her now. All right, so at 6 months into marriage, she runs into marital problems. And that's probably pretty typical, huh?
Yeah.
Like the first 6 months are bliss, and then you start to suspect there's something wrong here. And then you come to a conclusion, it's them.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
It's all them. They need to change. Uh-huh.
Right.
So, but anyway, at 6 months, there are marital problems. And one of them is disappointments of various kinds. You go through different. She's disappointed in him or the marriage in this way. She's disappointed in it that way. But the part in your book that made me laugh more than any other part is right there on page 10 waiting for us. And it says, she's wondering, is he not, she wonders, quite the man of action and decision she was drawn to? Is he instead a slobby man, a man who watches TV more nights than he should? And here's the part, who leaves his underwear in strange places. Oh, that just tickled me. And clearly has no intention of ever learning to load the dishwasher. Whew, I load the dishwasher a lot.
Ooh, nice.
I made it. I never do dishes by hand. Debbie does them by hand a lot. I don't do that. I almost never do that.
Yeah.
But I do load the dish. Do you want me to load the dishwasher, dear? Yeah, that'd be nice. Okay. But what's this part about leaving underwear in strange places? Like, what strange places could a man possibly leave his underwear in?
Oh,
are they under the dining table? Or are they
wherever he happened to be when he was changing, I guess. I don't know. The edge, the chair, the floor, the top of the dresser, the bathroom floor, the back of the toilet, wherever you happen to be, that's where underwear
Gentlemen
goes.
who are listening, there is such a thing as a clothes basket, all right? Become familiar with it. Anyway, on page 13 then, and we're not going to go page by page, the demons decide that she's got some disapproval going about her husband, and they want to start with that disapproval with the husband and expand it. Expand it to what or to whom? Expand it how? Would you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, she's the demon is basically saying, get her in a place where she is not able to be grateful or to express her gratitude. First of all, stop her from expressing gratitude.
Unless he's perfect.
Unless
I can't
he's
be
perfect.
Thankful, huh?
That's right. Get her where she thinks, unless all I see is an unbroken vista of perfection, it's almost dishonest for me to call out the one good thing. Thank you for taking the trash out. Thank you for going to work today and coming home to me. the thing that she can call out. She's so distracted because there's underwear on the floor that she's not going to call out those good things, because maybe that would be excusing or encouraging the underwear on the floor incident, So until I see perfection, I'm not going to call out any of those good things. And then the demon is saying, if you get her in this kind of mode, that until I see perfection, I'm not going to praise you mode, you can expand that to all of life, because it's just a posture of ingratitude. So like it expands to God himself. Until you bless me in the way that I happen to be demanding in this season, I will not give thanks. So yeah, it's about gratitude in all of life.
Yeah, I love that part. I love your insight in that part. And then we're going to land on page 35, where there's a chapter beginning on that page, and the whole chapter is titled Marrying Down. Marrying down. This is really good. To use a term we're hearing a lot of nowadays. So women are hypergamous, right? They want to marry equal or marry up. Somebody of equal or preferably higher social status, career, wealth, intellect maybe, not down, up. By the way, guys, be careful with that joke. I know you're only joking, but when you say you're trying to praise your wife, man, I definitely married up. Actually, that's not praising her so much because she wants to marry up.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Yeah, she doesn't necessarily like that.
So the demons get her to believe that she's married down, or to use a term we use a lot, she's settled. Is this a common problem that women wrestle with? Is this something that enters into the female psyche? How common, how powerful is it?
Yeah, I can't answer the question about, what are the percentages or whatever. I couldn't possibly know that. I know that I saw it enough in the newlyweds that I have spoken to see it as a pattern. I definitely know many, many women who do not feel this way about their husbands. Many, many. But I think I know a few at least who genuinely believe that he was so lucky to get her. And because of that, it's a struggle. It becomes a thing in her mind. And I don't know what it is. I think there's just, there are a few factors. I talk about fame in that chapter. Like in the case of this patient, she had some kind of a brush with fame where someone told her at some point, you could, and actually this was actually inspired by Of Mice and Men. There's a character in Of Mice and Men, a girl, the wife of one of the farmhands, who comes and hangs around the other farmhands and talks about how she could have been in the pictures because somebody told her, like some guy told her, I could get you in the pictures. So she's ruined for normal life forever. She's ruined for, living happily with her husband because she has this sort of other life out there that she's imagining she's good enough for. And I think maybe it's a social media age, but there's more women than not who have some idea that there's another life out there they really could be, that could be fitted, suited to them. And that they're really too special for just a normal guy in a normal life who just wants to work and come home and be a normal dude,
What kind of thing might it be? Like musician, actress, dancer?
Yeah, I guess, that kind of thing comes to mind. And maybe it doesn't have to be any of those kind of, performance-y types of things. I do think there's something delusional about a certain woman's personality type that makes this plausible to her, that normal life.
I found that really interesting. Like I had never come across that, never thought about that, never pondered it. Yeah. So I read that, went and talked with my wife about it. Is this a thing? Do you think this is a thing? She thought it's a thing, but honestly, I think she's right. I don't think she's ever really struggled with that.
Right.
Like, she didn't think I could have been famous if I hadn't married him. I could have an incredible life. But just my mother's in heaven now, so I can talk about her a little bit. And she's all glorified now, and she's all happy. But I think she dealt with this.
Yeah.
So she was involved in singing and dance. You've heard of Peabody, maybe in Baltimore. She went to Peabody a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
Working on music and dance and stuff. And then they couldn't afford for her to keep going there. And so I think she always lived with this thought that, man, I could have been
a contender.
I could have been famous. Yeah.
Yeah. And that presents unique challenges, I think, when you have to like change diapers and get your hands dirty and just live like a normal human being. There's just always this voice in the back of your mind saying, is this real? Like, are you really, has it come to this? Has it come to this? Yeah.
Yeah. So you deal with that in the book.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. On page 90, there's a childbirth. The patient has a child. And here's what the demon says. And now some new work can begin. And a little bit later, the humans call it hormones. We call it opportunity. Oh, I love that part. We call it opportunity. What's the opportunity? Want to talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the opportunity is this is a person who is dealing with a very real phenomenon, the hormones that come in after postpartum, hormones that are there all along. Really, it's always part of our life. This fallen world and these fallen bodies is that we're dealing with. At least for me, some irrational thinking that comes with these hormonal fluctuations. So the irrational thinking and feeling, that in itself is not a sign that sin is present. So the demon is just saying, you get in there while she's under the cloud of this, and you can make some of these things more permanent, some of these issues. Teach her to think that what she thinks and feels is the most real thing in all circumstances.
That's really good.
Yeah. And then just some other, I think in that chapter, some other habits to kind of start in on in early parenting that will carry on later, such as believing that you know absolutely the most about your baby. I don't know why this is. I think a new mom tends to think she knows more about babies than she may actually know. And a new husband seems to think he knows less about a baby. So he tends to, then he really does.
I believe that.
Like there's just there's sort of an insecurity, I think, with a dad about all that stuff when it's a new baby. And it's like, yeah, she does know more probably than him, but I don't know if it's that much. Is it really that much more? Like they both just became parents. So they're both pretty new to this. And if she makes him feel like a fool in some of those early little mistakes, like how he changes the diaper or how he, the conversation about letting a baby cry it out or not, I know a new mom she's going to have those instincts, and they're important and they're great, the instincts of caring for that baby. But if she decides to put that baby above his advice, above any needs that he may have, above that relationship, really, for that first 6 months or so, that really can plant some seeds that will grow into some big trees later on, just in his passivity in parenting. And she may never know that she actually contributed to it.
You also mentioned, and here's a quote, there are now a million voices using labels like gentle parenting or child-led parenting to describe something like anarchy. It's actually anarchy, but they're calling it gentle parenting or child-led parenting. A little later, children should be given free rein to express their emotions in any way that feels natural. Are these big things in evangelical Christian circles?
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, honestly, one of the reasons why I was hesitant to even write that chapter was just this needs more than a chapter. It's such a huge topic that the whole concept of authority in parenting.
Maybe you should write a whole book on that.
No, I don't need to be the one to do that. I'm a relatively young parent. But there have been some great...
Mom, I need you. Baby fell off of the bridge into the creek.
This is great. We'll have to debate whether we leave that in or...
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you guys edit so I can get my baby out of the creek really quick?
Go right ahead. Yeah, we can edit.
She fell off the bridge into the creek.
Fell off the bridge into the creek. If there's any way we can possibly leave that in, if she's okay with us leaving that in, I'll ask her. Is everything okay? Oh, you couldn't hear me. Is everything okay?
Yeah, she's okay. I'm so sorry. Yeah, she fell into the creek with her clothes on, and they pulled her out, and now she's having a snack. She's okay.
That's crazy. Wow, Mom's Inside Podcasting. So I just want you to know, we edit things. I got a team here. Okay, 2 guys are in the studio. This one's good. And he edits things. Okay. But could we have your permission to somehow leave in that part a moment ago where one of your children said to you, she fell off the bridge and into the creek? Is
That's
it possible?
Fine. If you can do it in a way that CPS doesn't come for my children, that sounds fine.
Would you rather we don't because of that?
No, it's fine. It's all right.
I think it could be a real great example of how real life happens to a mom like you who wrote this book, and we're here talking about it.
Sure. It's very typical. This same child, she's so accident prone. This morning I found her swirling a mop around in the toilet. So she was getting ready to clean the floor.
Oh, man.
But
crazy.
Yeah, I've been so professional with you guys. I forgot our first. Were you the ones I just stood up completely, and then
I think we had
my
a
kid
glitch
falls
of
in the
communication
creek.
there. No problem. Yeah, no problem. Incidentally, our youngest grandchild, our oldest is 19, but the youngest is 18 months. So we got one about the size of yours that just fell in the creek.
Yeah.
So then you have a chapter on sex.
Yeah.
Of course you do. Mm-hmm. That's important. And the demons try, this is interesting. Why do they do this? The demons try to sex-proof the marriage so that there would be little or no sex. Mm-hmm. On page 111, encourage her to dispense sex as if it were a precious or a scarce commodity. I thought that was clever. I like that a lot. Why? Why do the demons care? Like they want to tempt you to sex before marriage and extramarital, but in the marriage they want to tempt you away from sex. What's going on there?
It's just very important to me to make it clear that inside of a marriage, sex is a thing that the demons would not like. It is a thing that knits the heart of a husband and wife. It has the potential to bathe everything in butter, basically, just make everything better in the marriage. And it's, if the patient is doing what the demons want, she's dispensing it as a way of controlling, a way of withholding blessing until he does what she wants her to do. Until he does what she wants him to do. That kind of like the sort of withholding praise, just withhold good things from him until as your way of improving him. So I think that's the very kind of demonic logic. And you give me what I want, and maybe I'll give you some of what you want. And what the demons don't want is for the wife and husband both to see sex as a blessing, as a joy, as a recreation, as the thing that blesses them both for years to come and makes everything about their relationship better. So to see it as it is a duty, and it should be taken on as a duty. You do this because you've been commanded to do it. Sometimes that's why you do it. But it's also a delight, and it needs to be a delight for her as well as for him. So, yeah.
Great chapter. Really great chapter. They're all great chapters. That's really a great chapter.
Good.
Moving on page 129, I actually want to read 131. You talk about church hopping. I thought that's pretty interesting. Your husband is a pastor at a church. And is this something you all ever see actually happening? Do you have people church hopping? Of course you do.
I actually don't. Because we're in this church that's out here. We're in the smallest county in Tennessee, an hour and 15 minutes out of Nashville, a tiny town. People move from New York City, California, up north. People move from far and wide to come to Tennessee, and they find our church and they stick hard. Our people are big stayers in our church. We were one of those many churches, that had the 2020, 2021, 40% growth or whatever, just big booming times in the great sort. But
we did too, by the way.
Right. Yeah, I can believe that. So we're that's more, I guess, our immediate context. I have seen people leave churches, though. There's a line in there about we like to watch a husband come up with a theological reason to leave a church that his wife already decided to leave over her feelings.
Love that line. How true that is.
Right. So
or
I've
the
seen
husband not even come up with any reasons.
Yeah,
he
right.
Just quietly, dutifully follows her out the door.
That's right. They just kind of they walk. Yes, we've definitely had that experience. But the church hopping is something that I drew from my Nashville church experiences. I grew up in Nashville. My family did a little bit of church hopping, actually, but we went to a different church maybe every 3 or 4 years. But you just see this in the Nashville church culture in a big city where there's so many options. It is really, really difficult to stick with a church when you have another church with a better preacher and a better music. When you have all these options, it just makes it a shoppy kind of experience.
Yeah.
So
good thing to deal with. Appreciate it, and appreciate the comment about husband's coming up with theological reasons for why the wife is really leading them out the door.
Right.
I've seen that happen,
Yeah.
or no reasons, over and over and over again. So I love the way you dealt with that. Then on page 147, a bitter woman has a right to be angry. I forget if that's the way I worded it or did you word it that way, but either way, that's pay dirt.
Say it again. I'm not sure.
A bitter woman has a right to be angry. Is that my verbiage or yours?
That might be yours. But yeah, there's a chapter just about, there's a lot of talk about bitterness and how a woman, the demons want the woman to build up this sort of metal core of bitterness inside herself, to have suffering produce bitterness. And instead of the kind of pliable, fruitful, militant cheerfulness that the Lord would have her build, the sort of armor that the Lord builds for her is more of a living kind of armor instead of this brittle, metallic stuff that the demons actively want to promote, this hardness in her heart. So.
Hardness. I would actually read from page 147. The bitter woman has made the habit of thinking she is ill-used. And it doesn't matter how ill the usage. The flat tire or the unfaithful husband alike are simply new evidence to her that she is fundamentally unfortunate and has a right to be angry. There it is. There's that last phrase, has a right to be angry. Man, I run into this. I have a right to be angry. And then it even goes further. You must affirm my anger. You must affirm my out of control. The fruit of the Spirit is self-control. Mine is all out of control. You must affirm my anger. So do you think, are there many angry women or men who believe they have a right to be angry?
Yeah, I mean, I see this as a across the board men and women problem. I mean, there's a certain kind of bitterness that I think is a very feminine type of bitterness, but this is the flip side of that gratitude that really is that idea planted in the early chapter with the marriage and, calling out things to be grateful for in your husband, and that's spreading perniciously to all of life, this pernicious gratitude that might take hold of the patient, where she begins to see herself as essentially fortunate as a child of God who has been blessed, and but the opposite end of that, this just attitude in life where everything that you see is fresh evidence that God himself has wronged you by not giving you what you want. And that I see that in men and women all the time. Yep. So it's anger. It's the heart of anger, but
absolutely.
Yeah.
You deal with it in the book. Page 151, there's a chapter on, this is timely, this is great, on boundless empathy. Boundless empathy. What is boundless empathy and what's the problem with it?
It's just Joe Rigney's material. I just thought it deserved a chapter, but I called it boundless empathy. I can't remember what his term is. It's untethered empathy, maybe.
Maybe he uses untethered. That term.
I think that's right.
Or the sin of empathy.
Right. But untethered, the sin of empathy that he's talking about is just untethered, empathy that's untethered from reality. Boundless empathy that I use here in the book is just empathy that is not within the bounds. It doesn't keep to the bounds of reality. So you're going to empathize. You're going to affirm every feeling in another person as being valid and corresponding to reality, when we know that not every feeling or perception does correspond to reality. So the patient the demon is saying, like, this can make it where she's very ineffective in ministry with other people. And then it also bleeds over into her own life because she'll demand that same kind of empathy from her husband, from other people. I am right in my assessment of this conflict with my mother-in-law, or this conflict with whoever, or even just how I'm feeling today, because this is how I feel and it's real. It's the most real thing. So,
and then my job coming into her sphere of life would be to just affirm and empathize.
That's right.
Without any checks and saying, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So then the following chapter, I think this is something I haven't heard talked about as much, which is the sort of opposite ditch from that. And that's what the demon says, is like, find out which ditch she lands in. Is that the empathy ditch or this other ditch? And then push in the direction of the ditch, because that's what you want, is just an imbalance. That's all that you want. The opposite ditch being this kind of attitude in your ministering with people where you just assume there's no such thing as innocent suffering. You're a Job's comforter, basically. And every time you come into a situation, you come in with kind of a preconceived explanation for anything bad that happens to anybody. You got cancer, it's because you ate GMO food, or your husband left and it's because you must have done something to make him leave. So that's a shortcut, and it's handy to have. And a lot of the time in ministry, it proves true. When you've been in ministry a long time, you find there often is another story behind the story that they first tell you. But if you assume that in every case, it's a lazy shortcut to actually listening and finding your way through the weeds. So, yeah.
Tilly, loved your book. Want to hold it up again with the paper cover off? Here's the hardbound cover. Beautiful. Love it. Would men like this book? It was written for women, written by a woman for women primarily. Would men like it?
I have had a couple of these male interviewers really say that they enjoyed the book and felt like they learned, some things about women they didn't know. I'm not sure if every man would feel that way, but that has surprised me some,
Yeah, I actually tore through it, for the record.
Okay, great.
Just loved it. In fact, I'll tell you a little more story. It'll be interesting. So this was originally not my copy. One of my fellow pastors is sitting right there, and his wife found you before I ever did, and she bought this book, and she read it. And then we found out, hey, I'm going to get to interview you. So I went to Amazon, and I ordered the book, and then they said, it won't be there till such and such a date. Well, it didn't arrive in time for me to read it.
So you had to borrow it from the pastor's wife.
So she gave me her copy, and when my new copy shows, I give that to her. So anyway, so I got to read it. I think I read it on like a Friday night and a Saturday morning because it's very readable, and absolutely loved it. But it's written primarily for women. This is the end of the podcast. What do you want to say to women about this book? Bottom line, anything to say?
I don't know. Read it. Give me some feedback if you have any. And I do want to say that Canon created a really great discussion guide that they have available. It's like a PDF, but they did such a good job pulling out the kind of highlights and questions from each chapter and Bible verses that relate, because there's not a lot of scripture in there. You don't have the demons using scripture, loving scripture. So use that as a resource if you want to do this with your friends, because I'm hearing from a lot of people who are enjoying that format of discussion.
Yeah, and I did not know that existed. So thank you for pointing that out to me and to all of our listeners. Well, Tilly Dillehay, thank you so much for spending this time with me. Nobody else has fallen into the creek during the rest of this podcast.
Not so far, but I'm going to go make sure the baby's toweled off and give her some lunch.
You get to go check on them. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it so much.
All right. Bye now.